Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark. And in this episode, I'm joined by co-hosts Phil Lindsey and Chris Mueller. So we talk a lot on this show about the big two when it comes to comic books, right? Marvel, obviously, and DC, the distinguished competition. We've also talked a lot about the DCEU here on this show and the TV shows as well. We talk about a lot of stuff and the comics as well, obviously. Can't forget those. That's where all this stuff started, kids. And we talk a lot also about how what Zack Snyder did with the DCEU and right? And then now what James Gunn eventually is going to do with it. I think we're all interested to see how it's going to play out, what's going to become of it, how it's going to look, how it's going to feel, how it's going to sound, taste, the whole nine. I'm actually very anxious to see what he does with it, and I hope it all works out. But sometimes we also talk about the standalone films that maybe aren't part of the bigger picture, the standalone projects that maybe don't really fit in to the grand scheme of things with the entire DC universe, at least on the big screen. And we're talking about one of those projects here today. This film is Constantine. And if you're a comic book person, then you're looking at Constantine, you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't look anything like Constantine. Well, you're right. However, it does have Keanu Reeves. He's kind of a big deal. And yeah, I'm anxious to hear what everybody here thinks about this film. We're going to get into it. Constantine is a 2005 American superhero horror film. Oh, I like that. Directed by Francis Lawrence in his directorial debut. Written by Kevin Broadbent and Frank Capello from a story by Broadbent, is loosely based on the DC Comics Vertigo Comics Hellblazer graphic novels. The film stars, as we said, Keanu Reeves as John Constantine, and an assorted cast of characters around him. The film is produced by Lauren Schuler Donner. Heard that name many times before. Benjamin Melniker, Michael Uslan. If you know Superman on the big screen, you know those names for sure. And distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. Obviously, it was released on February 7th, 2005 internationally, and February 18th, United States, 2005. Yes, it's been that long. Running time of 121 minutes. The budget for this film was around 70 to 100 million. Boy, there's a big gap, isn't there? And the total box office is almost $231 million. And that is your lowdown for Constantine. So, Chris, were you a fan of the books? I don't know if I've ever asked you if you're a comic book guy before. All this time, I don't know if I've ever asked you. Are you a fan of the books before this film or since this film? Or what do you think about the book itself if you are a fan?
I never read anything involving Constantine at all as a kid. I've dabbled in a couple of things because of the TV show. I liked the Matt Ryan TV show.
Yeah.
When this movie came out, I went and saw it in the theater with a friend, and I remember about halfway through it almost falling asleep.
Ooh.
I definitely like the movie now better than I did the first time I saw it. I don't know why, I don't know what didn't click the first time. Maybe it was because Keanu was just such a weird choice for a role like this. But either way, there was just something didn't work and it didn't keep my attention. And maybe it was because I knew nothing about the character, but I've definitely grown to appreciate parts of the movie over time for sure.
Honestly, I think I'm right there with you. Not the falling asleep bit, but the bit about not really picking up the books. I've been into comic books since I was a toddler, it feels like, for a long, long time. But for some reason, just never got into the Vertigo line, although I'm very aware of its existence. And I'm also very aware that some amazing books and amazing stories have come out of that. And since then, I've dove into the Sandman show and some other stuff coming out of Vertigo, but still haven't committed to the books, which is very odd indeed. Phil, what about you? Do you have any background with Constantine? I know you're a comic book guy. What did you think about it going into this film, or what do you think about it since then?
I didn't read any of the books, but I was very surprised as somebody that was in comic book stores a lot at one point. And so at one point when I saw like Keanu Reeves, I was like, wait, but he's not blonde and
Yeah.
he doesn't look like Sting. Um, um, huh? And this apparently was Alan Moore's reaction to it as well. Like, wait a minute, he's not British. He's not blonde. What is
Hmm.
this? What is this shit?
To be fair, Alan Moore hates everything people do with his projects, but honestly, I'm with him on this. A lot of that didn't make sense for me either.
Well, I mean, to be fair to him, I know that he has this reputation at this point, but a lot of times his gripes with adaptations aren't wrong. It's just him at this point, and he hates all Hollywood corporate things at this point. But he isn't wrong about taking something that is very British and just plopping it in Los Angeles. That does take away some of the some of the intent of the original book.
Yeah, they very much American this thing up, didn't they? And
Yes.
dude, to Chris's point about Matt Ryan, that guy is so good as Constantine that there are moments when he's too good as Constantine, if that makes any sense. Like it's almost too far, but not in a bad way. It's almost like, God, this is exactly what this guy would look and sound like if he were real.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, and I mean, I don't have a problem with Keanu in this movie, but it did very much feel like if you follow Warner Brothers and you follow like all the things we know about the making of comic book movies now, that they were like, "Hey, Matrix was a big success for us. Think we could put Keanu in like another like leading role movie? Hey, how about this?"
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Very much what it felt like, and I wasn't surprised at all. Now reading stuff about it, when we decided to do this episode, and as soon as I saw Lauren Donner, and that is very much if you hear this and you're thinking Lauren Donner, where do I know that name from? That is wife of the late great Richard Donner. That is the name behind a lot of X-Men movies, and also it immediately clicked when I saw her name. I was like, yes, she's very much one of those create the spirit of the comic, not actually create a real depiction of the comic itself.
Hmm. Yeah, and to your point, this is after the Matrix, and this is before John Wick. So yeah, we'll get into his performance because man, I got thoughts. But we also got to mention, well, we don't have to mention, but I'm gonna. This movie did not do well with critics. Currently on the Rotten Tomatoes, which a lot of people have a lot of opinions about, an approval rating of 46% based on 230 reviews. Hui. I don't know if I'd rate it that low. Chris, do you think we get, because we're talking about, how filmmakers change things and they change things, like screenwriters change things. Do we get too hung up on that stuff, or do you think there was just way too much changed here for this film in particular?
When you get into a character who isn't as well known as a Batman or a Superman, it definitely becomes much easier to play around with parts of their personality and characterization. Like, look at Adam Warlock we just got in Guardians 3. Like,
Mm.
I doubt anybody is going to tell you that that's a super faithful adaptation from the comics. So I don't necessarily have a problem with them changing parts of a character as long as they don't change like what defines the character. I feel like I would have forgiven half of this movie if he had just been in a brown trench coat instead of a black one
Right?
and like had a better tie. Oh, also Shia LaBeouf. I can't do it with that guy. Like, this was around the period of Transformers. Like, this was his really annoying period where they were just shoving him in everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, he's not as annoying in this as I remembered him being when I
Right.
watched it today. they tone it back a little bit. And the way the way they kind of kill him at the end actually did make me laugh. Because like he's trying to act all badass and then immediately dies. But but yeah, I don't know. It's this is such a weird little like departure for DC Comics. I still don't even know what I completely think of it, but there are parts of the movie I really enjoy.
Yeah, just the Shia LaBeouf thing just speaks to everything I just said about Keanu Reeves. It very much felt like suits in a room that were like, "Hey, we got to give him like this quirky protege." How about Shia LaBeouf? Because he was a protege in all of these movies around that time period. Every single one of them.
iRobot, yeah.
Every single one of them. He was the plucky sidekick or the protege. Every single one of these movies.
And iRobot, which kids is in the archives, by the way, came a year before this film.
Yes. I mean, if we needed somebody to step in as a replacement, Shia LaBeouf. Hey, remember those great Charlie's Angels movies? Bernie Mac's not here. Bill Murray's not here. You know what we do have? Shia LaBeouf.
The fact that all that was said out loud in connection to each other is frightening.
Yes.
We don't have Bill Murray, but you know who we do have?
No, we don't have Bill Murray, but we do have if we did need another Bosley, we somehow got to Bernie Mac, and then from there, we got Shia LaBeouf.
Chris, I'm with you. I didn't hate him quite as much in this. You know, I don't know. I can't say I hate the guy front and back. I don't but there's times when I'm like, yeah, it's a little bit too much. But yeah, did we only get him in this movie so he could die and John would have somebody to avenge? I don't know. I mean, it kind of feels like that's what we got. I don't know.
Typically, with the goal of a character like that is to endear the crowd to him, so his death makes you want the hero to get revenge. And I think they failed in this movie. I don't think anyone in the crowd cared when Shia LaBeouf's character died. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
I feel like him in this movie is kind of everything if you were a comic book fan going into this movie that you probably didn't like, because they kind of sanitized all of the awkward and kind of like idiosyncrasies that Alan Moore put into the book, because the same character in the comic is not like this at all. He's kind of like off. Yeah, and so to do the Hollywood thing and go, oh, we've got to come with this new like plucky, good-looking guy. It can't be just like just a random no-name guy. It can't be somebody that's just kind of quirky and goofy. No, it has to be this guy that had this like Disney Channel run that has been like the picked guy by Hollywood. Which goes against everything that Alan Moore is. And that's why, again, I could see him taking one look at the script and looking at the casting, and it's like, no. The story of it, of course, is Alan Moore took one look at this thing and he was like, yep, take my creative credits off of this thing and give my half of the royalties to the artist.
You know, I don't know if, because all the pictures and interviews of Alan Moore, he gives you the impression of being a dude that lives in a cabin up in like some part of like remote part of England, and he doesn't have technology or whatever. But like, if the guy does have a phone, you got to imagine Alan Moore dreads opening his phone every day. Like, what else are they going to do now? That I'm like, here we go again. Like, dude.
Yeah, I'm sure he dreads getting any phone calls from Burbank or like LA. He's just like, leave me alone.
Caller ID, baby. Yeah, for sure. Oh my God. I mean, not to go off on a rant here, but can we name a project that has been a financial and critical success at the box office that he wrote? I mean, you could say Watchmen, but Watchmen had its share of critics, right? Like,
I would say V for Vendetta is probably the most successful one.
Yeah.
I remember that being pretty well liked.
Yeah, I at least critically, I think V for Vendetta is handled is received very well. I don't remember how much money it made, um, but it's kind of turned into like this big cultural shift at the time. Like when you think of like Anonymous and all the things that came afterwards, all the things that it influenced.
Guess what year that came out? 2005.
Yeah, that was around the boom period for comic book movies. It makes sense.
It was such a weird period though, because it was also the transition from like crappy to high quality, because we had Fantastic Four 2 and Elektra in 2005.
Ugh.
But then we also had Batman Begins. I mean, Constantine, as much as I don't think it's a good adaptation of the character, there's a lot of effort behind the movie.
Mm.
Like, they don't want it to feel like a cheesy comic book movie. They want it to feel like a horror movie, or at least a supernatural movie.
Yeah, that's fair. And I feel you're right. V was a critical success, but it made no money. The budget was 54 million. It made 134 million. So I guess, yeah, but that's not exactly a runaway hit. Man, 2005 was big. Like, and you know what? I'm not trying to sum this up and make this a quick show, but to me, this didn't have to be Constantine. This could have been anything. They could have written an original story, changed some of the elements, called him whatever you wanted to call him, sever any ties with Alan Moore's book, and just make their own. And people would have went to see it because it's him. But
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like this doesn't even have to be Constantine, honestly.
Yeah, I think that was kind of Alan Moore's point with it. Of like, if you're just going to do this, then just do that. He had the same problem with V for Vendetta, by the way, that
Hmm.
he felt very much like it's not the book that I wrote. The book that I wrote was a very British story. It was very much about British politics, and you took this and like kind of plastered Bush era paranoia and stuff over it, which is a
Yeah.
fair criticism, and that's why I'm like, I know he has this reputation, but a lot of the times he isn't really wrong to feel a way about his work being turned into something that it wasn't.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah. Like I said, if you're him, you're not checking your phone.
I'm sure he's just like sitting somewhere like, leave me alone and
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
calling here.
Well, again, not to get off on it, but League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, V for Vendetta, Watchmen, this movie, From Hell. I think he was okay with From Hell, wasn't he? Or am I wrong?
I don't remember. I remember. I only know like the most like infamous stories. Like this is the big one. He didn't want anything to do with this one. He very much wanted nothing to do with the Watchmen movie.
You know what's funny? I actually did watch an interview he gave like years after Watchmen came out, where somebody's like, "So have you ever actually sat down and watched it, like come across it on TV and seen 5 minutes?" He's like, "No." He's like, "And to be fair, it's probably a very good movie. I just have no interest in seeing it." Like, that was the nicest thing I've ever heard him say about any adaptation of his work. And it wasn't even about
Yeah,
something he'd
I
actually
mean,
seen.
I think his thing with Watchmen and why he didn't really care for it or why he didn't want to see it. This kind of turned into an Alan Moore podcast, but it is what it is. Uh, but I think his thing with it is that he felt like Watchmen was very much something made for the medium of comic books. It was very much a deconstruction of comic books, so it doesn't make sense to make it into a movie because it loses its initial intent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah. And dude, he's on the record as saying also, I think that, they don't do what I do.
Hmm.
These are books. These are stories. This is not what they're doing. They're serving a lot of masters, and I'm not doing that.
Yeah, and I get that. I very much understand that. I also very much understand, like I said, that artists being protective of their work. I get it.
Hmm.
Now, can he be a bit over the top with it? Absolutely. But you don't write the kind of things that he writes and not have like very rigid ideas on things.
True. Speaking of, which we weren't, but we will, Francis Lawrence, which honestly, I didn't know the guy's name. However, Francis Lawrence, his directorial debut, as we said, is this film, Constantine. He followed it up in 2007 with I Am Legend, 2011 with Water for Elephants. And then for the next 3 years, he did all three Hunger Games. In fact, he did the first Hunger Games, Catching Fire. He did Was Catching Fire the first one? Or was that a sequel?
No.
Yeah,
I
they
think
made
the
like
first
8
one
of
was
them or
just called The
something.
Hunger Games.
And then then he did the Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2. Then he did Red Sparrow, Slumberland, and now there's another Hunger Games project coming out this year from Lionsgate. The
Never
Ballad
let
of
a property
Songbird.
die.
Yeah, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snake. Dude, I never got part of that was filmed here in North Carolina, actually, maybe 30 minutes from here, not far. But I never got into that franchise, honestly, while we're talking about it. I just never did.
Well, you're not a teenage girl. It wasn't meant for you.
Wait a minute. Are you trying to gender type me here, freaking Chris? God,
Well, no,
you're right.
that's me being more that's me being more ageist than anything else.
That's fair.
I mean, The Hunger Games was like a well-made series of movies that didn't really make a lot of sense.
You know what? I'm not going to say that Constantine doesn't make sense, but let's talk about some positive things here. All right, I think this movie's well made. I think it's shot well. I think the effects are good. The acting in times is because for me, Keanu Reeves can be too much at times. Now in the John Wick films, for my money, he's effing great. He's dead on the money, exactly what that character needs. But there's moments in this film, and look, we got to acknowledge the cigarette lighter flip. That insane blam! Like every time, like that cigarette lighter became a character in this movie. They got to keep. Look, he smokes too much. Ha! Look, he's smoking again. Like they just kept freaking doing it, man.
I don't know why when you yell blam like that, it made me think of Chance the Rapper doing Cocoa Butter Kisses, where he's just like, blam, cigarettes on cigarettes. My mama think I stank. um,
Yeah. What do you guys think about the look of the film? Before we get into the cast, I want to get your overall opinion on this. What do you think about how it's shot? What do you think about how it looks? Does anything fall apart for you from a visual effects standpoint? Chris, what do you think?
I actually think the visual effects in this are pretty good considering the time that it was made and the budget. Like, it's not a $200 million movie, but one thing in particular that I actually think looks really good is when he's fighting the one demon that's just like made of a million bugs. Like that looks genuinely terrifying and very good too. Like it feels like Men in Black 3 tried to do that with the villain and it looked terrible, and this movie actually kind of got that right.
Phil, what do you think?
I think it looks good, but it's definitely one of those things where, again, you could just tell it's from that time period. You can tell that someone at a studio was like, "Hey, this thing was successful. Hey, why don't we do something like that?" You can very much tell that this was made like right after Hellboy was successful, and they were like, "Hey, we got a paranormal guy. Have him run around with like a big gold gun. Like, what? That looks cool, right?"
Well, I mean, if you're going to talk about the gold gun, okay, that's a bit much.
Yeah, I mean, look, I do think the effects have aged very well. I think like the stuff where he's in hell still looks distinct. It still looks good.
Yeah.
I think like just the depiction of demons and angels still looks good. Um, you can very much tell, like I said, that it's just in that time period. So that's why the sequel that they're trying to make, you can when they said that Del Toro is like attached to this thing, I was like, yeah, of course, because this is his style. This is the kind of movies he likes to make.
Yeah, good call. Excellent comparison to Hellboy. God, man, that makes a ton of sense. Let's get into the cast here, man. I don't know what we can say about Keanu Reeves that hadn't been said already, but I stick to what I said initially, that I feel like there are moments in this film when he is, Chris, it almost feels like he's hamming it up. And that sounds like I'm suggesting he can't act, which I'm not trying to do that. But like, God, there's moments for me where I'm like, he'll deliver lines. I'm like, oh, that was cringe, man. Am I wrong here?
Well, I think the best example of that is when he's doing the exorcism at the very beginning of the movie,
Yeah.
and he gets on top of the girl, and he's like, "It's John Constantine,
Yeah.
asshole," and like trying to sound all menacing. It's like, dude, are you auditioning for Batman? What's going on right now?
That's
Yeah,
good.
it does very much feel like his character from Bill and Ted auditioning for like an action movie. um, which is kind of my criticism of Keanu a lot. I think Keanu has done good things. I think he has been a good actor, but I do think he's been typecast a lot as kind of like, hey, badass looking guy with dark hair. Um, and I don't I don't want to compare him to Nicolas Cage in a bad way, definitely not in a negative way, but I think that he has kind of that same like endearing character stuff that Nicolas Cage does well. Like yeah, the hamminess is like, why are you doing that? But again, I feel like that part of what makes this movie memorable. I think that's part of what made this like a cult classic for some people because they're into it.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm glad it wasn't just me. Like, I have been hard on this guy in the past. I really have. And then the John Wick films came along, and I don't know how you guys feel about all this. We've done John Wick, by the way, kids. It's in the archives. Go look it up. I love doing that. But I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I swear to me, for me anyway, John Wick was the first time that I actually felt like they have figured this out for him. They meaning whoever, but this is perfect. Like, I don't know that I've ever like Bill and Ted was great. It's a classic. I don't know how anybody could hate that film. What's wrong with you? But there's been stuff he's done over the years. I'm like, I don't know if I'd call him perfect here. But dude, the John Wilkes stuff is just freaking, to me, perfect for him. It's written, it feels like the whole thing's written for him and the way he acts. And I think it's great. But I don't get that sense here in this movie at all. It just feels again like he's hamming it up. Maybe I'm just being too hard on the guy.
No, I don't think you are. I don't feel like this is a character that was written for Keanu. I think those John Wick movies are specifically written for him. Um, like I have to assume somebody that made those movies had him in mind from the very beginning. Um, and this very much feels like, hey, here's Keanu playing Constantine.
Yeah, yeah, good call. Good call. So, well, we know again the guy's a legend at this point, and from everything that I've ever seen about him, he just appears to be like a good person, which is unheard of in Hollywood, as you guys know. Like the bad people tend to outweigh the good by a substantial margin, but that's never really been the buzz on this guy. He just seems like a decent guy who's just doing his thing. So I got respect for
Yeah.
that. Let's also talk about his immediate co-star. And kids, you'll know her as Melina Vostokov from Black Widow. That's Rachel Weisz is in this film. And you can't even say, by the way, she's Angela Dodson. Nice. Angela. Very well done. But, and she also plays her twin sister, Isabella. You can't really call her a love interest here, Chris, can you? Because she and Constantine never actually hook up through this whole film.
No, they kind of tease it at the end. Like at the very end, they kind of tease that they're like interested in each other because that's what Hollywood has to
Hmm.
do. But yeah, there isn't really a romantic element of the movie, which is a departure for comic book movies, but it really would have
Yeah.
felt too shoehorned in. Like she's worried about getting her sister back. Constantine's trying to save his own soul. Like they both have a
Yeah,
lot on
it
their
would have
plate.
definitely felt forced.
Hmm.
I have to love the irony of them having a very British actress in Rachel Weisz and, and departing from this like British comic book and just having her do this very American accent in this movie. Very funny, man.
Wasn't it Gangs of New York, I think, where DiCaprio played an Irishman and Daniel Day Lewis, who's Irish, played an American? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, and I think Rachel's good in this, but I think Rachel's another one where it doesn't feel like she's miscast. It just feels like they found a lot of actors and actresses that were in something else that was a hit, They were like, "Hey, how about them? That she would work here," and I'm sure she, like I said, if this movie is not Constantine and she's just playing like this unnamed character, she's fine here. But like even like some of her delivery of some of the lines in here, it just feels like, what are we doing here, man? Like, um, when she comes to his apartment and she's explaining the stuff with Isabel, and he just like kind of coldly goes, "Yeah, she's probably in hell," and she just looks dead at him, "Got you," and walks away. And I'm like, okay, that happened.
Yeah. The twin sister thing, I don't know. I'm not going to say it's unnecessary, but it kind of felt like, wonder why they're twin sisters. Why couldn't this just have been a sister? I don't know. But that maybe that's me reading too much into it. Chris, what did you think about her in this movie? Are you in agreement with what Phil said here?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Rachel Weisz at that period in time was like everybody's wife or girlfriend or love interest in movies. Like she was in a bunch of stuff as the lead character's love interest, like The Mummy, you know. She's great as an actress. Like I really like her a lot actually, but I feel like it took until she was out of her 30s for Hollywood to finally be like, okay, let's give her some roles that aren't just the stereotypical wife girlfriend kind of thing. But yeah, she's fine here. It is like Phil said though, it is funny to take a British actress and make her play American in a movie that should have been British.
I'm a big fan of Fred Claus. It's one of my favorite Christmas movies, and she plays Vince Vaughn's girlfriend in that movie. Not a huge part, but she's very
Oh,
funny in it.
I remember I saw that movie one time.
Really? Oh, dude, it's on my must watch of Christmas movies every year. Yeah, I have to cover it here on the show sometime. I honestly, I'm with both you guys. Phil, I agree with what you said. I don't think she was necessarily miscast, but I do think you could have put anybody in this role and it would have been fine. I just don't see anything huge here. Shia LaBeouf as Chaz Kramer. We've already talked about it. We'll move on.
I mean,
So,
I I should say this. As much as we've made jokes out of Shia LaBeouf, I do think the reason that a lot of studios picked him early on, because he had a lot of promise. Like eh, I I mean, I get it's easy to pick at things like the Disney Channel stuff and just Transformers and all the Michael Bayisms that he's been attached to. Um, but he is a good actor, and I do think that he did bring like some good things to this role when it was understated. But it just seemed like around this time period, everybody had him do the very nervous, anxious, goofy to be here guy, and um, it just kind of felt like he was playing the same character in a lot of movies a lot. And when he was actually given stuff to do here that wasn't that, it was good.
have you seen the Peanut Butter Falcon?
I'm not.
He's not bad in it. Not bad. Not bad. I think he got some. In other words, he was given some praise for that movie. I think he did pretty good.
Yeah, I do. I think he got typecast a lot very early on.
Oh, for sure.
Here's one that when you hear me say this, you'll go, "What? How do you forget?" I kind of forgot about Tilda Swinton in this movie. Honestly,
Oh, she's one of the best parts of the movie to me.
she's great. She's Gabriel long before she made her appearance in the MCU. But she's great. Chris, why is she so great as Gabriel here?
I honestly don't know. Like they really got lucky with that casting because she just is perfect for that role for some reason. And like, even though Gabriel is typically a man, like they did a good job kind of neutralizing Tilda's gender in a way where you kind of questioned, like, is she playing a man or a woman? And like it's never a factor. First of all, it's an angelic creature, like gender matters. But like, yeah, just the way she carries all the scenes she's in is so great, especially at the end when she's like trying to go to Constantine into killing her.
Oh yeah, yeah.
She can't commit suicide or she'll go to hell, so she wants to go to heaven, and Constantine's like, nah, you're gonna suffer.
There's a sequel right there, guys. We never saw what happened. Did you notice how when they walked off, she just kind of stepped backwards back into the water, and then she just
I know, like, where are you going?
like, where are you going? You have a seat? You have a swim? What are you doing? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just be over here.
Yeah.
That would be, oh my God, what a detail. If they actually make the sequel, what a detail where Keanu's just walking down the road in New York and passes by like Tilda Swinton just working in a bookstore or something. Like Gabriel just became a normal person and made a life for themselves.
It would have to be. You know what? That's freaking brilliant. It's perfect. Honestly, that's probably what would happen.
Or
and to
Working
your
at
point,
Starbucks.
yeah.
yeah.
Or it gives them the opportunity to write it as like spending a couple decades as a human maybe made Gabriel's point of view change. Something, there's a million ways
Ooh.
they could go with it.
Got a caramel macchiato here for John. John.
Man, we could write the movie here. I actually really, really like that. That's really well done. And Chris, to your point, the way she played it, it's not necessarily a woman's haircut that she has in this movie. And Tilda Swinton, the person, does not have a voluptuous figure. She's not a 1960s pinup model, right? So I think they did blur the lines between what gender is this angel. I think it was great. I think it was, exactly what the role needed. And I kind of feel like we didn't get enough of her in the film. I know why we didn't, because we weren't supposed to know that she was the one behind this. Had you guys figured that out watching this back? Did you know that she had something to do with all this by the end?
No. They didn't make that very clear.
Yeah, they don't really lay it in until she kind of does the whole villain explains their evil plan routine.
Yeah. And I mean, I do think she's great in here. I think that just how they cover religion in this and how it's very cynical, and you're of course seeing it through John's cynical view of religion. It makes sense for them to have like this androgynous, like hypocritical angel be the main villain. I think that was a good choice. I think she was a good choice as a actress to play Gabriel. And I like you guys said, I think that she is one of the highlights of this movie because she's just a good actress. But it also, again, as a British actress.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's hiding her accent a little bit here.
Yeah.
When she got cast as the Ancient One in Doctor Strange, remember the uproar over that? Like, why is this not an Asian man? Why are we doing this? What's going on? And I'm like, I think people kind of miss the point. Like this is supposed to, like that role was genderless. Like it wasn't supposed to matter who the person was, only that the character. I mean, I don't know. I'm not Asian American, so I don't have a strong opinion. Honestly, I can see where people got upset, but it's interesting that that's two different roles that she's had are kind of like along the same lines there.
Yeah. I did get it. Like when you actually see the movie and like there's so much Asian imagery around her, like just where the Ancient One lives, like everything around like the mysticism there, it's very much built in Asian culture. So to just like throw a British woman in this role was kind of an odd choice. But I enjoy her in those movies. I can see why people are like, why did they do this though?
Yeah, that's fair. Pruitt Taylor Vance, bet you didn't know that name, as Father Hennessy. I do not believe he is a character from the books. He's an alcoholic priest. That's a fun one.
Yeah, what's the deal with that? Does John take something from him that's protecting him?
Yes.
And then he ends up dead later? Like, what's the deal with that?
Yeah, that's never really explained well. But he's wearing that amulet or whatever around his neck, and I assume like that's protecting him because we see him give it to Angela later in the movie. But it's never really explained what it does.
Supposedly, it keeps the voices out because he can communicate with the dead.
He needed him to take it off so that he could go and find information from him. Yeah, that wasn't explained very well. I do very much like the idea of putting a drunk priest in this movie and making his name Hennessy. Hilarious.
Yes.
Hilarious.
Oh, it's good. Larry Budweiser's here, guys. Let's go talk to Larry Budweiser. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, no, I really I like the cast of characters in this movie because there is some cool world building they do in this movie.
Yes, yes, 100%. I'm with you. And Chris, his look, the actor is really great here. Like his look, his mannerisms, you can just tell life has beat him down. What he can see, this life he lives now, he's probably not got long left. He's out of shape. His health's probably bad. Like he didn't want to be. He just keeps looking. I don't want to be here. Like I just don't want this. Like I thought it was great actually.
Yeah.
He's actually a really good actor. Like
Yeah.
anytime I see him pop up in something, he always does a great job. So I wasn't surprised that he kind of like stole some of the scenes he was in this movie.
Yeah. Speaking of stealing scenes, was it Dimon Hansu? I think. And
Oh, Jim, yeah.
if you know the MCU, well, you'll know who this guy is. He's freaking great. Like he's Papa Midnight here, who was a character from the Vertigo books. I mean, holy cow, this guy, everything he does is good. I don't think I've ever seen him in anything that at least his part of the film wasn't outstanding. I mean, and he's made the news recently, I think. Wasn't he one of the guys that was coming out saying that he, for lack of a better term or phrase, wasn't actually being compensated as well as he could have been for these roles that he's had?
Yeah, he said like it's still hard for him to make money in Hollywood because he's never really playing a main character. Like, you look at his role in Shazam and Black Adam, like very short roles.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure there was a small paycheck attached to that.
Yeah, the Wizard Shazam, and
Like
in
Blood
Marvel,
Diamond is probably the most prominent role I can think of where he's in like most of the movie.
yeah, good call. Korath the Pursuer. I couldn't have guessed his name. I know he's in the MCU, but I couldn't have guessed Korath the Pursuer if you put me on the spot.
Yeah. Believe his name is pronounced Dajamin Unzu. I think that's how you pronounce it.
I completely butchered it.
I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm probably messing it up as well, but he's from Benin, and isn't he from like France or something? So I'm sure there's like a pronunciation thing that I'm doing wrong there.
He is from France.
But yeah, he's one of those actors that he brings kind of like this presence to everything he does. He has a great voice. He has a great look. I don't care what you ask him to do. He does it with dignity.
Hey, we got another Bosley, guys.
Oh,
He was Bosley. He was Bosley in the 2019 Charlie's Angels.
Oh,
I've never seen that movie, so
Me neither, but I just looked it up.
there you go.
Actually, he was from Benin,
Mhm.
Republic of Benin, France still, but yeah, God, I've never even heard of that. Jeez. Yeah, I mean, dude, we did Doctor Strange here on the 6M, and I never knew how to pronounce this actor's name, so I'd look it up just to understand and realize it was Chiwetel Ejiofor. I had no idea how to pronounce his name, and I didn't want to butcher it. So I looked it up, and that's it. But I did not know how to pronounce this gentleman's name. And like I said, I love this guy. He's so good. And man, not for nothing, guys. He looks effing great here. You talk about the guy that's got style. Everything looks great on him. Like his scenes are memorable. Like you just put Keanu in his black trench coat and a Men in Black outfit and just made him a chain smoker. But man, Papa Midnight is crushing it in this movie, man. He looks great.
Yeah. Imagining him going from this to being Queen Latifah's love interest in Beauty Shop after this. It's pretty funny.
Oh my God. And the description of the character is great. A former witch doctor who once fought against hell, he swore an oath of neutrality unless one side should up the balance of power, open a nightclub to serve as a neutral meeting ground for both sides of the war between heaven and hell. What a great description. That Alan Moore guy knows how to write comics, man.
So apparently there's a little cameo in his club. So you guys remember the movie Domino with Keira Knightley?
Yes.
Where she played the actual bounty hunter, Domino Presley, I think is her name. So that woman, Domino, is in the nightclub. like the actual. She has a little cameo where she's like a demon, or she's an angel sitting at a table, and there's a demon like nibbling on her ear.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yes.
You know.
2005 film, by the way.
2005. They were ahead of the curve. They were trying to do that connect the universe. Um, um, but no, you're right. I think Papa Midnight is great in this. I think he is a great character here. He's another one of those guys where I feel like great world building. I think they do a great job of building this network of people that Constantine like kind of goes to for favors. And they're all just kind of annoyed with him. They're all just except the one guy that helps him with like brings him the holy water and stuff. He seems to like him, but most of the people around him in his circle seem very much annoyed by him.
Yeah. Let's talk about another dude here, Balthazar. Man, if that's not a biblical name, I don't know what is. A half-breed demon with a special interest in and personality and personal history with Constantine. Gavin Rosdale, who was like famous and getting put in stuff for like 15 minutes, and then it was over. I was never a fan of, I was never a Bush guy, like ever. Like I didn't hate the band, but it just wasn't for me. I just couldn't, the sound, I don't know, I just couldn't get into it.
Tom Clark 6M Podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you.
What's everybody think here of Gavin Rosdale as Balthazar, Chris?
I think he does a good job, actually. They don't give him a ton to do. He's kind of just there to play a slightly menacing dude, you know? But yeah, I enjoyed his little role in this. I actually, like, it took me a while to place who it was, because I haven't thought about Gavin Rosdale probably since 2005. So I didn't really realize it was him. Even today while I was watching it, it was like, who is that? Why do I know him?
Right. Phil, are you a Bush guy there, Phil?
Which Bush are we talking about? Wait a minute.
Hey, it's a family show. It's a family show.
Band.
Keep it clean. You're better than that, Phil. Get your head out of the gutter.
I was talking about the
You're talking about the
president.
Oh crap! Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not good
shame
enough.
on you.
I need to get my head out of the gutter.
Shame on you. You know, he's good in this. He's very much good as like the menacing like businessman / half-breed demon guy. We don't really get we don't get enough of him, and we don't really get an explanation of what else he does. When he has that fight with Constantine later in the movie, you get the feeling that he's a part of some kind of corporation, like he's like some executive role, but we don't really get an idea of what it is, because every time we see him, he's wearing a suit.
It feels like there's well, I'm not going to say this because I don't know, but it almost feels like, Phil, you're talking about world building. I think they were kind of hoping this thing was going to be a hit and they could go and come back with parts 2, 3, and 4, and they would have storylines they could play off of. This could be one where you could see the history and flashbacks or whatever. Maybe they were hoping for a sequel. They could define some of these things.
Yeah, I can see that. Which he dies, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's dead.
Pretty gruesome too, actually.
Well, like, kind of, because Constantine shoots him, and then part of his face is still there and talks to, you don't see him, but the devil when he walks in.
I assumed in that scene he was talking to Gabriel, and Gabriel outright killed him.
Oh.
Yeah, he like blows
Oh,
away.
maybe.
He ashes or something, right?
Oh, does he? Okay, maybe I looked away for a moment.
Yeah, I thought the hint in that scene that it was Gabriel is that's the same way that she blows Constantine away when he hits that wall.
Gotcha.
So let's talk about another This guy is the real big bad of all big bads. He is Peter Stormare as Lucifer. Everything this guy is in, and we've done the Big Lebowski here on the show. He was great in that movie. Everything this guy does is freaking great. Big Lebowski. He was in Minority Report. He was in Bad Boys 2. We're not going to talk about that. He was in 22 Jump Street. We're not going to talk about that.
Wait, he was in Bad Boys 2? Who was he in
He
Bad Boys 2?
was.
It's also in John Wick too.
He was, absolutely. Oh, he's so good in that movie. He was Alexei in Bad Boys 2.
Drawing a blank. But
Yeah.
I'm sure he was there.
He is a Russian guy, I'll bet you.
Sounds very Russian. Sounds like
He
a
knows
Russian
how to
guy.
play those Russian guys. You know, you say the big bad, you see him for the last 10 minutes of the movie, and he doesn't get in the rest of the movie because nobody else would have had a fighting chance because he's freaking wonderful. Like, you don't hear these words too often, but man, what a great devil this guy is. Like, what do you think about this, everybody? What's your take on Peter Stormare as Lucifer?
I think it's great. I think he does a good job in the scene that he's in. We hear it multiple times throughout the movie that he's got it in for Constantine, and this is the soul that he would come to Earth himself to collect. And so when he does show up and he like parches down in front of him with like this big smug look on his face, it's great. And I think he does a lot of really good character notes, like trying to drag Constantine away and whistling. Funny to me every time I see it.
Yes, very good. And like the floor, the floor's crumbling beneath Constantine. He's not allowed to take him. Oh,
That
that's
was
good.
good effects when they did that, like the floor kind of rippling.
Yeah.
It looked really good. But yeah, Peter Stormare, like that's one of the most perfect castings for the devil you could think of. And apparently he is responsible for the way the devil looks in the movie too.
Mm.
The original plan, when he showed up to set, they were like, all right, we're gonna put you in all this leather with these spikes and these fake tattoos.
Oh.
And it was his idea to be like, why don't you put me barefoot in a white suit with like black tar coming from my feet? And the director was like, whoa, that's way better. So like that's what they did. So he's responsible for the entire look of his character in the movie, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I just remembered who Alexei is in Bad Boys 2. He's the guy that gets double crossed by the main villain in the movie, and he comes to his house and tries to kill him later in the movie. And he's like drunk and he's like cursing, and he eventually gets killed in a very gruesome way.
There you go.
He was in Arrow too for a bit, wasn't he? Wasn't he the villain that was like selling some kind of drug?
He was, yep. And in fact, the character he played was also a character in Vertigo, Warner Zeidel.
Oh wait, wasn't the character's name Count Vertigo?
Yes, actually. Yeah. You're right.
Because the name of the drug was Vertigo, and
There you go.
Oliver's sister got hooked on it. That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Count Vertigo is a very prominent DC villain. It's like a D-list, C-list DC villain.
Listen, look him up. Like his TV credits, just the TV credits, began in '84, and the dude is still going. And I mean, I can't. We'll be here all day if I tell you all of them. We'll be here all day. Crazy. That's just TV, man. This guy's done everything.
I bet you he's been on every version of Law and Order as a different character.
I'm sure. He's in American Gods. You guys ever get into American Gods?
I've seen a few episodes.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. A Neil Gaiman property. That tells you a lot right there. Which I like. I like Neil Gaiman. It's just, you know.
Yeah, Good Omens season 2 coming out soon, even though he's not around to do anything with it.
Oh, brother, I'm gonna have to go back and dude, I thoroughly enjoyed season 1 of that show.
It was great. It's probably one of the most pure like book to screen adaptations ever made. Like it's literally almost scene for scene, line for line.
I'm so glad they're doing the. I just saw the other day they're doing the season 2. I'm like, oh, I'm so happy. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch it.
It looks good. Yeah, the trailer looks good.
Well, kids, there you have it. There is the majority of the cast.
Oh, we didn't even talk about the tease, the after credit sequence. Like, this was before Iron Man made post credit sequences popular. This movie had one.
Come on, man.
Very true.
Ahead of its time.
Yeah, and of course it's teasing that, hey, look, Shia LaBeouf might be back. It's like, oh, thanks.
Great.
That's gonna make me care about a sequel.
Something to look forward to.
But
Man,
yeah.
you did good, kid. Yeah. Yeah. Who knows he liked him so much as to leave his that effing cigarette lighter that we saw 100 times in this movie on top
Well,
of
because
the
they kind of
headstone.
imply that he gave up smoking at the end of the movie because the devil took his cancer.
Yes.
Mm.
He's chewing nicotine.
Yeah.
I actually like that spot at the end where he flips out and you think it's the lighter and it's just nicotine gum. That was actually kind of cool.
Yeah. How much do you think he practiced that lighter move before this movie?
That's a good question.
Oh,
Good
it's
question.
a lot.
Yeah, it got to be very annoying for me. At some point, I'm like, oh, stop. We get it. You're dying. Jeez. But, the lung cancer got cured, right? The devil done took it away.
Yeah.
So he could get him to hell later.
Yes.
So
he is very ironically holding the tar from his lungs in his hands.
Yeah.
When he disappears.
So let's talk about plot. So we get the Spear o' Destiny, right? Which is, if you know your Bible, kids, supposedly when they hung Jesus on the cross, that he wasn't dying fast enough, so they pierced his side so he'd bleed out, right? And this is the spear. And man, the guy that finds it at the beginning of this movie, right off the bat, we get that scene with the car. We've seen this in movies many times over the years where the car just kind of envelops around the character. Oh my God, it's so well done here. Like when you see how he lands on the hood, it's a little funny. But that collision with the car is freaking great. Like it sets the tone for how powerful this relic is, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks really good because they don't try and slow it down to make you able to see what's happening better, which makes it that much more shocking. Like a lot of movies would slow it down and show the car wrapping around the person so you
Yeah.
know everything. And in this movie, it's so jarring. But it's like perfect.
Oh, so good. Hey, look, before we get too far here, I left out two guys out of this cast. We didn't even talk about Beeman,
Yes.
He's barely in it.
Max Baker. I never even heard of this guy.
Yeah, I liked Beeman. He's another guy that Constantine goes to for favors. I liked him.
He ends up dead, right?
Yes. Knowing John Constantine's kind of like knowing Dirty Harry. It's not a good idea because you're probably gonna be dead by the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's like being friends with Punisher, like being one of the guys in a van with Punisher. Yep. It's not a good idea.
Yep. Here's a little tidbit for you. The bouncer at this club where they had to predict what was on the card. This is Tanoi Reed, who is the Rock's stunt double and his cousin.
Oh, wow. Oh, wasn't he an American Gladiator too? Like the one that Hulk Hogan and Layla Ali hosted a few years back. Remember
he
that?
Was. Yeah, he was Toa.
Yeah. Because I remember they were like making a big deal out of the fact. They're like, The Rock's cousin is here, blah, blah. Which is like, typical pro wrestling booking.
Sure. Too. Don't miss this brand new take on American Gladiators with The Rock's cousin.
Yeah, but like they literally were advertising him in the commercials. They're like, he's just as tough as The Rock. Like,
sounds like a WWE booking at one point. By the way, right? Royal Rumble winner, The Rock's cousin.
Oh, by the way, and speaking of Hellboy earlier, apparently the Spear of Destiny in this movie is the literal same prop they used from Hellboy.
Shut up, really?
Yeah, must have been the same production company or something. And if you look at it, yep, it's the exact same thing. And it looks like the one that's in Indiana Jones, too.
Oh. That's cool. Continuity. Dude, universe building here. We're going to tie in 3 different properties together. Are you kidding?
I mean, if you were gonna tie in Hellboy to anybody, Constantine would be the character to do it, right?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
those are 2 different publishers, right? Because
But I mean, like, if you were gonna
Yeah.
tie Hellboy to one of these bigger properties,
yeah,
Constantine would be his way in.
yeah.
Hellboy's Dark Horse. What if Dark Horse and DC could play nice?
Well, who owns Dark Horse right now?
I thought Dark Horse was owned. I thought it was independent. Is it?
Yeah,
They
it's
were an independent publisher. Maybe they're not now.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I
it's still
didn't think they
independent.
were anymore.
I'm
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure on like the rights to things like Hellboy or anything, but I thought the publisher was still independent.
Well, I think
Maybe.
Mike Mignola owns Hellboy, doesn't he? He didn't sign that away, did he?
Yeah, I think he does. I don't know. It's don't get me into like the business of publishing and rights deals for movies, 'cause I'm sure it's all kind of weird litigation.
Dark Horse is owned by Embracer Group, which is a Swedish video game and media holding company based in Karlstad.
They're the ones who own all the Tolkien stuff now.
Hmm.
Yeah, Embracer Group, they have a pretty big library of stuff they own.
I'd say total assets $93.4 billion.
I mean, the Tolkien estate alone makes up a large chunk of that, but they own like everything but the movie rights. I think the movie rights are still with Warner Brothers or Legendary Entertainment, one of those two. And then all the TV, video games, board games, books, all that is Embracer Group.
So, do you guys get much into the whole religious, like angels and demons and their own earth and its modern times? And it's, Christopher Walken was in these movies, I think. Prophecy. And we've seen, different studios take a crack at this. I mean, like anything else, when it's done well, it's good. But that could be anything. That's comedy, that's romantic comedy. If it's done well, it's good. So if it's done well, it's fine. But how do you guys think this stacks up maybe with some other movies of this, like the same vein that you've seen before?
I think it works in Constantine's universe because Constantine's a con man and a guy that doesn't take any of this seriously. He looks at it all cynically. And so it's a good viewpoint for the audience because based on what your thoughts on a religion, it's not going to feel like they are trying to preach to you. And in the other vein, it's not going to feel as offensive because it's a comic. It's all like kind of like satire.
Chris, do you get into those kind of movies like The Prophecy and all that?
Well, the Prophecy in particular, no. But like, I consider myself non-religious as a person. But I actually find the concept very interesting. So shows and movies about the afterlife or the concept of it actually really fascinate me. I love that this movie made hell like, so apparently the look they were going for was the moment right after a nuclear explosion. Like hell looks like it's constantly in that moment.
Well
And I
done,
thought
too.
I thought the way that they made the demons look was super creepy and awesome. Like all that imagery was great, but I think it was actually really intelligent not to show the other side. Like they don't need to show us heaven. Because what are they going to show us that we haven't already seen before? Like heaven is a pretty bland concept in terms of what it is. Like it's, it's the nicest place in the universe. Like, okay, so it's a blue sky and green grass. Like there's only so much you can do with that. But with hell, like we've seen so many different artistic interpretations over the years. I actually really like the way that they did it in this one. As far as the concept of like all the different angels and demons and how they dealt with everything, I feel like they really did think they might have sequel plans in place because they planted so many little seeds, and like you guys were talking about with the world building, like they left the door open to really do more in this world, and that's kind of why I hope the sequel thing does happen. Like did we ever find out, like, are they actually doing it or did they cancel it?
It sounds like it's still happening. At least
Okay,
Keanu
I hope
Reeves
so.
and a lot of people attached to it seemed like it was still happening. seemed like Keanu was very gung ho to do more movies as well.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does not look like that. It does not look like it's been shut down, even though we are in the midst of a writer's strike, which could actually lead to an actor's strike. So the stuff you love, kids, may love it while you can, because if it's new content, you may be unhappy in the next few months because there may be nothing new coming. So
I mean, right now the only things in the pipeline that I'm looking forward to are like Loki, Good Omens season 2, and the rest of this Ahsoka show. And
yeah,
then I don't really know what else is coming out soon that won't be affected by the writer's strike.
that's good. Good point. Yeah. So what do we think? All right. So we talked a little bit about the look, and I'm with you, Chris, 100%. I thought this is where the effects really shine through for me. The depictions of hell are freaking great. Like, I think all that, I think it looked good then. I think it looks good now. Like, we've done films here on the show that are, 20 plus years old, and man, some of it's tough to look at, but only because we've come so far. But like, I don't think this movie is so old to the point where it's like, oh, that looked bad. Like, I don't get that at all from here, Phil. Do you bump into anything here where you're like, oh, that doesn't look good at all?
No, I think the effects have aged really well, but I think that they did a lot of understated stuff with the effects. It's not like they made a lot of stuff overly CG. There's a lot of practical stuff they did here that looked good as well.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, when they did use CG, I think it looked good. When they did rely on more practical stuff, I thought it looked good as well.
Speaking of Nicolas Cage earlier, did we know that Nicolas Cage was originally cast here? That was who they wanted?
Of course he was.
Oh God.
Yes.
Of course he was. Nicolas Cage is great.
Warner Brothers wanted to begin filming. So yeah, but it all fell apart when the director's seat changed hands a couple of times, I believe, and that's why it fell through with Nicolas Cage. We're not going to talk about that Ghost Rider film or films. Holy God.
Nicolas Cage was going to find a way to play a comic book character, man.
Yeah.
He was going to find a way. And I didn't hate the first Ghost Rider. I didn't think it was terrible, but boy, that second one. Oof.
The second one literally ignores parts of the first one.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
I didn't much care for the Elvis thing that he had going on with that first movie. Like, what are we doing? It's good. Nick's wearing a hairpiece. What is this?
You didn't like the jelly bean martinis?
No. No. Yeah. And you know what kills me? Not to rant, Nicolas Cage is a massive comic book fan. Like, he collected and read. I think he sold his collection at one point. I don't even know why he sold it. What are you, crazy? But the guy's a true fanboy.
His manager screwed him over. Like he
Is
lost.
that what it was?
Yeah, he lost most of his money, and that's why he was taking like every movie offer for about 10 years to try and rebuild his fortune.
Wow. I don't know if I knew that.
Because I know he had a copy of Action Comics #1. I don't know if he still does or if he sold it, but that was like his prized possession.
Yeah, because he's a Superman guy, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, you made fun of him adding the Elvis stuff in here. Seems a little meta, man.
Right? There's some odd synergy happening here. Nicolas Cage as John Constantine. Well, they obviously couldn't call this movie Hellblazer. I mean, supposedly, that's what the book is, right? But they changed it because they didn't want any similarities to the Hellraiser films. I'm actually very good with that. I didn't have an issue with that at all. Makes a lot of sense, actually. And to your point there, Phil, they put this thing in LA instead of England, which is beyond weird. Supposedly, the director justified it by saying the comic book was not exclusively set in London. Boy, there's a long way around it. That's like saying, hey, look, the Beatles didn't just play in England. Come on. What are we doing?
Batman leaves Gotham once in a while. It's fine if we put the movie in Chicago.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, you did take a character that is from Liverpool and just outright just put him and plopped him right in the middle of Los Angeles with no connection to England at all.
Exactly, yeah.
Like I said, I would have forgiven half of the stuff in this movie if he just had on the red tie and the brown trench coat.
Yeah. I think that was a style choice that they were just like, nope, he's got to wear all black.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
because of the Matrix.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah. That Keanu Reeves guy, it's working with the black. Let's just put him in there.
You also have to remember at that time, this was like at that midway point before comic book movies really started taking off and being incredibly lucrative, and creators could go, all right, I want this to look like the comic book. No, everybody was trying to not look like the comic book as much as possible, and that's why I laughed
Mm,
when I saw Lauren Donner attached to this thing, because she's attached to a lot of other movies where people were in leather instead of spandex.
very true. Yeah. Yeah, I remember the mantra in Hollywood at one time was it's a comic book film, but that doesn't mean it's got to look like it. I'm like, what are you crazy? Like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah. A lot of times with these comic book properties at that time, it was like get rid of all the color, everything had to be black.
Yep. I mean, if you've seen the photos of Hugh Jackman in the
I
yellow
was
and
just gonna
blue,
say we're finally getting Wolverine in a yellow suit. I'm just happy
I-
about that.
Is Lauren a producer on Deadpool 3? Because she was a producer on
oh
the first
God,
Deadpool, wasn't she?
God, how does she keep getting attached to everything?
I think that she is. I have to look that up, but I'm pretty certain that she was a producer on the first two Deadpool movies, wasn't she?
She's not on part 3. No. Who is it that's in the Star Wars universe and she's attached to every single film? I'm
Oh,
blanking on her name.
Catherine, what's the last name? Catherine.
We talked about it here multiple times. I know.
Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh, there you
That's
go,
it.
Kathleen.
Yeah, maybe it's that. She's busy, gets a lot of stuff done. I don't know.
Lauren Donner, who was very busy. Her name is attached to all of those X-Men movies.
Yep,
There, maybe that's why she's not attached to Deadpool 3, because it seems like the theme of this is killing off that universe.
that's fair. Plus, she needs a break, man. Evidently, she doesn't sleep. She's so busy.
She should have a cameo in that movie if she does not. I
I
think
mean,
that
it
would be
looks
great.
like the last thing she was credited on was the New Mutants, which was 3 years ago.
Yeah, she
Did
did.
anyone see that, by the way?
I did not.
Yeah,
Oh. Hmm.
yeah, I watched it.
Let me take that back. No one saw it, obviously, but like, I mean, like here on the show. So you saw it. What'd you think?
All the criticism is valid.
Oh wow, okay. I never did
It,
give it a
it's
chance.
like there are a couple of good ideas mixed into a lot of bad execution.
Hmm.
It really felt like they probably recognized halfway through production, like, oh, this isn't going to be anything. Like, let's just stop putting money into this. And you can really tell that they were working with a constrained budget at times.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't this midway through production after Fox had sold to Disney?
I
And
think
so,
so. Something stopped it for like
Well, I
two
think
years from coming out.
it was close enough to being finished to where they were like, all right, we kind of have to finish it at this
just let's
point.
just wrap it up. But I think they also realized, like, yeah, the writing's on the wall for everything we're doing here. They're probably not going to keep any of this cast or any of this stuff we're doing. So let's just finish this up.
But the really funny part was they actually brought them back like a year and a half later for reshoots, and they had to de-age some of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that cost them a bunch of extra money that they didn't have.
Oh baby, they lost like 50 million on that movie or more. Yeah.
Like the one dude from Stranger Things who
Yep.
was in it. Like they had to de-age him because he was at that point in his life when a year of aging like makes a big difference physically.
Charlie Heaton. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a cluster mess of a movie. I don't think it's really worth the time to sit down and watch it personally.
Yeah. What what a weird time period from 2004 up to today, and just like the failure of X-Men in some ways. I mean, of course X-Men also was a colossal success in some ways, but just some of the things that take away from that time period is so funny, man.
It is.
But I mean, even when you look at this movie, like this is very much still from that time period where you cast movie stars first when you're making a movie. You don't have the story and the idea in place first, like, and just go get like a guy that might be a no name or somebody that might be a TV actor. Like, no, you cast movie stars because that's how you make money. Like this was before the property came first.
I mean, that became Marvel's. method, didn't it? I mean, yes, they
Yes.
cast Downey and whatnot, but we're not talking about they cast the actor of the moment in anything really.
No, because I mean, I don't think people remember, but casting Robert Downey at the time was a risk.
Sure. Yeah. Favre was like the only one that wanted him and he kept going to bat for him. Like, yeah, we talked about that here too, man. Like the fact that if that movie doesn't get made, look how the landscape of everything that we know and have enjoyed over the past, oh my God, how long has it been? 2008 to now? Oh my God. It's crazy.
It's weird. I just remember like the initial talk when they kind of announced all that. They're like, we're going to do Iron Man, we're going to do Captain America, we're going to do Thor, and then we're going to put them all in one movie for the Avengers. And everybody was like, oh my God, that they've never done anything like that before. It's
Mhm.
crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, it was just such an interesting time to live through because people were like really genuinely excited about the concept of a shared movie universe.
Yeah.
And then every other studio was like, oh, well, we got to jump on that bandwagon. And they all bungled it terribly.
Yeah, no kidding.
The
Yeah.
Dark Universe,
Oh,
is it even a
Oh,
thing?
wow.
yeah.
That Tom Cruise mummy movie, man, just terrible.
Oh, it's so bad.
Terrible.
So bad. The most interesting part of that for me was Russell Crowe. I thought his role was interesting. I mean, more so than Cruise's for sure.
Like, he was interesting, but he was also like exposition machine / world building tool. Like, we got to establish that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde also exist in this universe, and we need a guy to explain to Tom Cruise that there's all this other crazy stuff. But the funniest part about it is that Russell Crowe calls Tom Cruise like a young man.
right.
Isn't Tom Cruise like the same age as Russell Crowe?
I wouldn't be surprised. It's just that, well, let's be honest. Which one of these guys have held up better through the years, right?
But still, it's just one of those funny things where it's like, you can kind of tell that was something. Okay, so this makes it even funnier. Tom Cruise is 2 years older.
I knew you were going to say that.
That makes it even funnier.
But see, Cruise has got that wacky Scientology voodoo black magic going on that keeps him young. I'm just saying. So,
Yeah, well,
I thought they'd get a better pop than that. I'm disappointed.
if you believe Jim Caviezel in his new hit movie, it's all adrenochrome.
Oh my God. Let's don't get into that.
Jim
Jeez.
Caviezel is still around doing things.
Oh my God. Do you not know about what's going on right now, Phil?
No.
Yeah, it's yeah.
We'll talk about it after the show.
Yeah. Whole other podcast. Yeah. Let's just say, well, we won't say anything. Yeah, it's hooey. Dude played Jesus at one time. What are we doing? So yeah.
He's playing Jesus again. There's a sequel coming out.
Oh God, there is, isn't there?
What?
Yeah.
How's the? All right. Pretty sure this guy's dead. I thought that was the end of the movie. Like, you're just gonna.
Oh, do you not know? Do you not know the story of the resurrection, Phil?
Right.
Still, like, what are we doing? Like, no. I thought the whole purpose of the Passion of Christ stuff was like to be a one-off. Why are we? What?
I don't know, man. It's Mel Gibson.
Oh, good God.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, hooey. Well, not to end the show on a down note. Let's try to not end the show on a down note. Instead of talk about the guy that played Jesus, let's talk about these devils and stuff because that's more fun. But hey, no, but look, that brings up an interesting point. Man, what a segue that is. I'm telling you. Is it interesting to anybody here that the only creature or the only character we got from the other side of this war is Gabriel? Isn't that interesting? We didn't get anybody else, did we?
Not really.
Yeah. That's a choice, I guess. Wonder why we didn't get like another, like the angel Michael or whoever.
Yeah, I mean, Gabriel is also in the comic. I think that's probably why there was a choice to use Gabriel. I don't know, but I very much like the choice of never having God say anything in this movie, because yeah, of course, it's a very Constantine cynical thing to be like, yeah, like even at towards the end when he's like, man, could sure use some help, and doesn't get an answer from God, and then he just was like, screw it, and that's when he like goes through with the second suicide attempt to get the devil to come out.
Yeah. So the plot here, how are we feeling about this plot? Is this working for you? He calls himself a suicide, even though he came back. I mean, I guess technically he was, because the story here is that he had these gifts. He couldn't take it, so he killed himself. He was dead for 2 minutes, and he saw hell, and he came back from it. But like, I mean, how's all this work for you? I'll be honest with you. I don't know how close this is to the book, because again, full transparency, I never read the book, so I don't know how close it is. But how's this hold up for you, Chris? What do you think about the plot here?
Well, I know that they got rid of a really important part of his backstory in the book. In the book, it's like there's a little girl that got damned to hell as a result of something he did, and he's been trying to like make amends for that the whole time. They sort of wrote that out of this.
Right.
But like they almost kind of replaced the twin sister with her because he sort of sacrifices himself to save her in the end. I mean, the plot to this almost is secondary. Like you're almost watching this movie for the action scenes and the vibes and stuff. Like the plot isn't really super complex when you really break it down.
No, it's not. It's not a very complex plot line, but it's also one of those things where the origin very much has to connect to the rest of the story that they're telling in this movie, so that it feels self-contained. Like I think the choice of making him a suicide survivor is to give him a connection to Isabel later in the movie, which is also a way to explain how he is already seeing hell, and why he would have like a link to that.
I mean, it makes sense. So, if you were going to, I don't know, we kind of talked about how they kind of just threw Keanu Reeves in this, and it could have been anything else. I mean, how excited do you think people are going to be for a part two? I mean, they will be because it's him. Can we envision a part two being like miles better than this one because of time? Or, I mean, what's everybody think about that?
I don't know. Like, it really depends on who's involved on the creative side as to what it's going to be. Like, is this just a cash grab, or are they actually going to do something interesting and potentially build out a world here? Are they going to try and connect it to anything else going on with the James Gunn DC universe? I really don't know yet.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, the plans for the sequel happened before James Gunn came in. So I don't know if they're connected. I know that there was at one point that the Justice League Dark movies that they were going to try to make, and Constantine was going to be in that. But I think that was possibly a recast. I don't think that was going to be Keanu.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know, but it's kind of hard to tell how people are going to react to this, because I think that people that like were big cult following for this, they'll be excited. But I have to assume a lot of people aren't even going to remember this movie. This movie is almost 20 years old.
Very good point.
But so I don't know. It's tough to tell.
Yeah, good point. I don't know. I agree with both you guys here. I think a lot of it has to do with who's writing it and who's directing it, obviously. And number two, if enough people care enough to go see it. I mean, we talked about Suicide Squad here before, and we've talked about we've never covered Shazam as a solo episode or anything, but we have discussed how DC / Warner Brothers seems to do much better when they're not trying to world build, when they're not doing the DCEU stuff, and they just focus on solo, one hits or whatever, one shots, I guess. And those tend to be a little bit better received, and they're not having to, shoehorn it into a universe that it's already failing. But, that narrative is going to change now. I mean, so maybe this will have new life in James Gunn's DC universe. I don't know.
Yeah, I do think the standalone movies that Warner Brothers have done recently have been better than anything that was like connected to something or had a shared universe. And even if it wasn't a shared universe, all of the stuff that was kind of self-contained worked better.
Yeah. Well, kids, there's this movie that we just talked about called Constantine, and we don't know if there's going to be a sequel or not. We didn't have any DC / Vertigo experts here to give you the lowdown on how accurate it is versus the book.
But hey, we tried to do us some justice there for you. Interesting trivia bit as we take this thing home. If anyone didn't know, his first appearance, he meaning John Constantine, was Swamp Thing, another Alan Moore book.
That I did know.
Yeah. Still looking for a we did get Swamp Thing in that, what was the film they did on the streaming on Disney Plus?
The werewolf one? Werewolf by Night?
Yes.
That was Man Thing.
That was Man Thing. Well done. Because that's Marvel. See there? Man Thing and Swamp Thing. By the way, that Man Thing was great. Let's just say it out loud. It was great.
Oh, yeah. And I heard that that's not the last we're going to see of it.
Yep. I think you're right. That's where my head was going.
Yeah.
By the way, did you guys get into Swamp Thing, the movies, by the way? Anybody here like those movies?
No. Yeah, I don't remember them enough, but I've seen them. I don't remember anything about them off the top of my head.
Dick Durock played Swamp Thing in the first and second movie. Don't know how I remember his name. Adrienne Barbeau was the love interest. I remember that. And I remember part 2 was bad. How bad was it? Part 2 was so bad you could see the zipper on the back of the suit.
Oh my God, I remember this now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like I said, I vaguely remember seeing them as a kid, but I cannot tell you anything about these movies off the top of my head.
Did either of you guys watch any of the TV show that they made a few years ago that like was literally canceled before it even premiered?
Yeah, I remember people were very high on it based off people that saw it. I remember there was like an entire campaign to get it uncanceled, but I haven't seen any of it.
I think you can watch it on Max right now.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Max, where things go to die.
Yeah. No kidding.
Except for Teen Titans, apparently. That keeps getting brought back.
Cannot get rid of this property, buddy. Cannot get rid of it.
Yeah, it'll never die.
Yeah, I do want to check out that Superman cartoon that just debuted. That apparently that's you can watch the first 2 episodes of it on Max.
I've not checked it out.
I believe all the episodes will be on Max a day or two after they air on TV as well.
Okay.
But yeah, I wanted to check that out too.
And that Swamp Thing show, if I'm remembering correctly, got canceled for a very odd reason. Like, I'm going to make this up as I phrase it, but I think it's close. Something to the effect of they couldn't justify making the film or the show. They couldn't. Right? They could somehow, something to do with money or whatever. They couldn't justify moving forward with it, which is like, they just tapped out before it ever even happened.
Originally, it was going to be on the CW.
Yes.
As part of their whole Arrowverse bullshit.
Yeah.
And then I think at around they had 2 episodes left to go to film. And the CW was like, we can't commit to this anymore or whatever. And then the studio stepped in and was like, okay, well, you can finish making the 2 episodes and then we'll shop the season around. But nobody picked it up in time for them to actually renew the contract options. So Virginia Madsen, who was in the show, she was very vocal about just how much they screwed everything up behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's very odd all that happened.
It's one of those characters I think just works better in animation.
You might be right, actually.
All the DC comic animated movies that they make are always really entertaining. I wish more people would give those a shot because they're not they're very much made for adults most of the time nowadays too.
Yeah, it was supposed to have been unexpectedly cut short due to creative differences with DC Universe's parent company Warner Media, reducing the original episode order from 13 to 10. It was also reported that it was cut due to budget shortfalls after the expected level of tax rebates offered by the state of North Carolina were substantially reduced. So it's the state's fault that I live in. It's our fault you didn't get the Swamp Thing. But you're right. A lot of people were not happy about that. The creative people behind us said this is a mistake. So, yeah. Well, we'll see if it's a mistake if they do this Constantine Part 2 movie they've been talking about. I'm full of segues today. Come on.
I see no reason why it could not be a good idea to revisit this. especially if you got people that are enthusiastic about making it.
Yeah, why not? Why not? It's Keanu. He's still great. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, I believe
Well,
it's going to be the same director, right?
is it going to be the same director?
Last I heard, it was still Thomas that was attached to it.
Lawrence.
Sorry,
No
Lawrence.
worries. Well, yeah, I mean, supposedly he was attached to it from the beginning, and this was in 2022 when there was talk of it.
We'll see what happens. They announced The Rock would be playing Lobo like 10 years ago, and that never happened. So,
Oh Lord,
just give Momoa the role.
just give
enough.
Momoa the role.
Enough.
Be done with it. He would be freaking funny. It'd be hilarious. It'd be fun. It'd be great. You kidding me? But you know what it is? They don't want to cover up that pretty face. That's what it is.
Listen, Momoa strikes me as a guy that's also just dying to play Lobo as well. Like, just give him the role.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that as well. Well, let's try to put a button on this. Chris, what do you think? What's your last word, if you got one, on Constantine?
I think this movie has aged better than a lot of people probably expect it to. If you go in expecting like a straight up adaptation of the comic, you're going to be really disappointed. But if you go in just looking to have some fun watching a Keanu Reeves movie, I actually do think you can with this one.
Yeah. Phil, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's an enjoyable movie. I do think it's aged better than people expected it to. You can tell why it's like kind of a cult classic among comic fans. Well, I don't know if it's so much comic fans, but just you can tell why it's a cult classic. And like I said, I wouldn't mind seeing a sequel. I think a sequel could be entertaining.
Again, I say why not? If this were any other actor or whatever, maybe I wouldn't say that. But I just believe Keanu Reeves has found his groove at this point. And I don't know if, anyone's capable of making a bad movie, but I think he'd be forgiven pretty quick unless it was just absolutely heinous. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Curious to see. And again, we said this before on the Flash episode that I'm curious to see what James Gunn does with the new DC universe. We can only hope that it will be much better than what we got before. So, there you go. Didn't end negatively, but didn't end positively either. It's wishful, hopeful thinking. I'm hopeful for the future. That's how you end. End on a good note. That's what we're doing with this show. So there you go, kids. And that is Constantine. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.